this movie is less of a narrative experience. This is just taking the memories of the people who lived through a real event in, like a real war, and trying to, realize it for one of those individuals who was badly wounded in it and has no memory of it. Like, that's the whole inspiration behind this movie. Oh, Luke is telling me off. He's mad at me.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. But it does it in such a way where, there's this terrible tension to like what war really is. You're bored. You're just waiting for something to happen. You're worried about what could happen. You're trying to strategize and game plan for any eventuality. And then it's the thing that you least expect every time, like a grenade through a sniper hole that completely fucks up all your plans, puts you on the back foot, and puts all of your lives in extreme danger.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 65. There's an old saying, war is hell. But according to the new film Warfare from directors Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza, that phrase is only half the story. As it plays out in the new movie, largely in real time, the phrase is more something like, war is really boring, and then it's hell. It's also harrowing, dread-filled, and uncomfortable, as we will soon discuss. Stick around for our featured review of Warfare, but first, in the news, we've got a duo of unfortunate deaths in Hollywood that we need to talk about. We've got a full, overflowing watch list, and of course, we're going to end the whole shebang with the Mentionables. Please do like, please do subscribe if you have not already. But before we get into it, Chuck, anything else you wanted to cover before we got into everything?
Shout out to that random guy who thought that we maybe could use some production assistance. He offered his services in an email this morning, and we got a kick out of that. We probably won't be utilizing him unless we suddenly start, getting gobs of YouTube AdSense revenue or something. Otherwise, it just won't make sense. We're part-timers at this, after all. We thank everybody who does watch us. We've picked up, a handful of new subscribers in the last few weeks. And we also, have had an uptick in views for an old minisode, one of the original minisodes on this channel, actually. That was talking about, the king of the miniseries, Richard Chamberlain. And, a couple weeks ago, he did pass away at his home in Hawaii at the age of 90. Big bummer. If you really want to know the scoop on this guy and why he's important to, the history of, narrative, miniseries, storytelling on television, you can check out that minisode. But, we wouldn't have Shogun 2024 or whatever it was if he hadn't, done it originally. The Thornbirds is a classic. He's also known for, Dr. Kildare. I think that every boomer probably grew up watching him. But yeah, I was very sad to hear this, but I also found out that one of his last roles was actually in Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that, or I had memory hold that fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't really, to be completely honest with you, the most I know about Richard Chamberlain comes from your minisode. I wasn't a big TV movie kid, in the 90s.
Yeah.
Pouring over his IMDb page, I think actually the only thing that I've ever seen him in is Twin Peaks. And, even then, because that show is just an overflowing tome of different characters, his performance, or I shouldn't say his performance, but his role did not really register to me. He's not
Same.
in it for very long. And so, I think you're kind of the Chamberlain guy on this show. And, but yeah, still very, very, very sad. I was looking over his extensive career, and, but yeah, it's great that he, was able to live in Hawaii, live out the rest of his days in Hawaii, and pass away at the ripe age of 90. So good for him, and a very, very extensive career.
Yeah, and if there's any other, I guess like items or like, things from his, credits that should be sought out. The one that I can really recommend is the TV movie adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo. He is
Mm.
excellent in that. And that one really sticks out to me. He also was in King Solomon's Mines, like the Alan Quatermain, adaptation. So yeah, he's just one of those guys. We're gonna miss him. But what everybody was talking about in the last week or so was, of course, the passing of Val Kilmer at the age of 65. We all kind of expected this. His appearance in Top Gun Maverick basically served as a, oh, heads up, this is coming. Get
Mhm.
ready for the impact. But I guess, how did you handle this news, and which, roles from his career did you revisit afterwards?
Yeah, I mean he's a great actor. I kind of realized, again, as I was sort of looking over his filmography, how few of his movies I've actually seen. Because when you look at his, resume, for every Top Gun, for every Heat, for every The Saint, there's like five more movies wedged between all of those that like you've never heard of or like people have completely forgotten about. So again, a very, very prolific career. But the first movie that I recall actually taking notice of like Val Kilmer as an actor or as like a Hollywood star, other than Batman Forever, of course, was 2000's Red Planet, which
Yeah,
is a awful, awful movie,
very
and
bad movie.
just yeah, huge box office bomb. And to date, I think the only film that the director has ever done, because he just completely washed out of Hollywood after that movie. But I did see that when I was 11 years old, and I just remember. That was the first time that I clocked Val Kilmer as like an actor, as a star. And of course I've, seen all the other big movies he's been in: Tombstone, Heat, which I finally remedied a couple years ago. Famously, I hadn't seen that movie until I think 2022,
That's right.
and yeah, and so yeah, it sucks that he died. And it sucks that we were deprived of like a
For
whole
real.
like last act of this guy's career because of his throat cancer. He could have, worked for, another 20 years, but we were sort of deprived of that because of his, throat cancer diagnosis. But yeah, what comes up to you, or what kind of stirs in your mind when you think of Val Kilmer?
It's it's all the obvious roles, of course. Like his Doc Holliday performance should have won an Oscar. Like his
Hmm.
death in that movie, like, is shattering and memorable. Like that, I love that movie. But if there's one that I appreciate more than some of the others, it's just because it's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang as Gay Perry, the
Hmm.
gay detective,
Hmm.
because he is just so fucking funny. And I am so mad that we never got Kiss Kiss Bang Bang 2, or whatever they were going
Yeah,
to call that.
yeah.
Because I remember discovering that movie on DVD in high school and just thinking, oh, wow, this is such a gem. This Robert Downey Jr. guy is pretty awesome. Like Shane Black is a great director. And then 2 years later, Iron Man happens. And I was like, oh, yeah, this guy was good. But so was Val Kilmer in that. Like, I remember people making comments at the time because he was gaining weight and people were giving him shit for it, and like he was kind of chubby in that movie.
Hmm.
But he was so awesome, and that movie was just so perfect for the dry, humor that he, kind of was a master at. And
Hmm.
I guess, of course, the last, you know the documentary that they made from his own movies is extremely powerful and interesting too. Just hearing what he was, going through getting his perspective on like the island of Dr. Moreau. And you know, like not only was that production a disaster, but his life was a disaster at that point. And
Mhm.
yeah, no, he 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 was very unique, you know, because he obviously had the, you know, the movie star looks, but you could tell that there was some, you know, real like artistry at work, you know, and transcendence happening even if he was doing something, you know, piddly. There was just a seriousness to him, and that smile. I mean, how can you not love that smile?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely like, yeah, just because, somebody passes away, I don't think we should avoid talking about their flaws. And it's been well documented that he was hard to work with,
Yeah.
especially in his early and middle career. But he seemed to find, a degree of humility, later in life. And, he was more capable of, I don't know, I guess just making fun of himself and or even like um just being easier to work with, I guess, is kind of what his uh you know on-set behavior seemed to have a turnaround once, even before his diagnosis, which I think can oftentimes give people kind of a 180 on their thoughts and their feelings and their attitudes. But I think even before that happened, he was sort of turning around his attitude towards things. And so um but yeah, he will definitely be missed. And yeah, that scene in Top Gun Maverick now, like I almost like I think I've watched that movie like two or three times since it was in theaters, and now it's like, oh man, I don't know if I can watch that scene now because it's like lent that scene is lended now a degree of, I mean, it was always sad. It was always an incredibly sad scene within the context of that movie, but now it's like, just fuck,
Oh shit.
how
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree with you there. And it's gonna take me a while before I revisit it, just for that reason. Yeah,
Hmm.
because yeah, like this one hurts. This one hurts. We lost a couple good ones. One was kind of expected due to his age. This one kind of came out of left field, and you know, I remember how like you know, like in past years, it seemed like the death, you know, like pool of the year was
Yeah.
just filling quickly. But these ones, you know, I guess you had to, yeah, between, you know, David Lynch and, you know, and you know, in this batch, it's like I'm kind of concerned about who else is gonna go. Like
Hmm.
George Lucas or Francis Ford Coppola or like Martin
Oh
Scorsese could
God.
die any minute now. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to will it into existence, but that's just kind of how it feels like we're catching up to our heroes on the
Hmm.
timeline of life.
Hmm.
But moving on to the watch list here, I was able to see one of the, you know, award fodder films from 2024, A Complete Unknown. You know, the story of Bob Dylan, you know, in his early career, from James Mangold. You know, is the writer director, I believe, unless there might be some other writers attached. I'm not sure, but this doesn't have the hook, the cinematic hook that Walk the Line did for me. It is, you know, very well made. The live singing is always a great choice, and they do a great job with it. The actors in this movie, but I just didn't give a shit about anything that was happening. Like this kind of feels like one of those you had to be there to care things. Like we're getting that stupid Bruce Springsteen biopic next year, and who under the age of 60 really fucking cares? Are we going to be
Yeah.
getting a Dave Matthews fucking biopic in like 10 years from now? Like, these singers have their moment, and yeah, they're important to the cultural landscape and all this shit, but this is not an interesting story to me. The Oh, he has this humble little girlfriend that he like has a humble little apartment with, and he writes his best songs while he lives there, and then he fucks around and treats her like shit, and then he lashes out at the folk music establishment and plays rock and roll man on electric. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what I'm really more interested in is the tour that he goes on in England with his electric, music, where the band are his accompaniment. Like I want to see that. I want someone to make a
Mhm.
movie about the band. I'd rather see that because that's the band I care about for some reason. Like I may be a little bit of a hypocrite here because no one under the age of 60 or 70 gives a shit about the band but me. you know, but I don't
Sure.
give a shit about this movie. Like, I think that Edward Norton as which of the folk people is he? Pete Seeger. Like,
Yep.
I liked him. I liked everything that what the fuck is his name? The
The Johnny Cash guy
Yeah,
or
he's
who?
good, but no, it's that other folk guy, Arlo Guthrie.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I forget the actor who plays him, but he's all debilitated and he's just bedridden, and all he can like do is like grunt and like hit things with his hand, and like he'll like blow into a harmonica if he has it positioned right, like that. Like I liked those scenes a lot, and otherwise though, this movie just did not do it for me. It's a very like worthwhile exercise, I suppose, but not impressed by the the performances here. Like this is like the movie that gets made to get token Oscar nominations and win nothing, which is exactly what happened.
Sure. I've always wondered because I haven't seen this yet, but the one of the things I think about is how movies like this and movies like Elvis still keep getting made in
Yeah,
like a post Dewey Cox world, a post Walk Hard world, and because it's so hard to take these types of movies seriously now. And so how does it function like as a music biopic as far as like are you just sitting there and you're watching these scenes and you're like, "Oh my God, this is bordering on parody at this point." Or does it
it,
do anything to like mix up the formula?
it does nothing to mix up the formula, but there's nothing happening in this story that would actually make it veer into parody in that way. Like
Okay.
he's not doing drugs. Yeah, he fucks not Janis Joplin. What's the folk singer in this? I can't
Oh,
remember.
yeah, who Monica Barbeau plays. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know who you're talking about.
and like that's how much I did not internalize Joan Baez.
Yeah.
Oh, he's gonna fuck Joan Baez behind his girl's back again. Oh, he's gonna be a slob and a dirtbag and not clean up his girlfriend's apartment until like literally the moments before she walks back in the door from her like trip that where he's been fucking around on her on. Like, oh boy. Like I think that Inside Llewyn Davis is a far better and more worthy, like cinematic experience about this time and place. And
Mhm.
I know that it was kind of deliberate on their part. Even the other Bob Dylan movie, is it I'm Not There? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Yeah, that's far more interesting because
Mm.
it's a little you know like surreal and subversive. This is just so safe that and like yeah, whatever edge there could have been to Bob Dylan's story is sanded down. And yeah, oh yeah, and like every like recording studio sequence, that's where it gets like eye rolling, and you're like, oh geez, yeah, they have to have someone be like, oh, what's he playing? He's not supposed to be playing originals. Like that. There's like,
Sure.
or the moment, like the big conflict is all about bringing electric to this folk festival, and all the purists being pissed about it because they hate the Beatles, and and they don't want to corrupt what they have going on.
Mhm.
And I guess I guess it's important, but I didn't care. But this is the kind of movie you just throw on to throw something on. And yeah, Chalamet does get a little like it's not an Oscar worthy role. It's the kind of role that if a lesser filmmaker had made the movie, it would have been nominated for a Razzie. That's my hot take. Like
Sure.
he is not that good in this, and
Yeah.
the material doesn't.
He's doing a
He's just doing an
he's doing an
impression.
impression.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Hmm.
demand too much of him. Like the Boyd Holbrook's Johnny Cash, way more interesting in the brief moments
Yeah.
he's in there, because this is like strung out Johnny Cash era. Like that's the snapshot, of the moment that we
Yeah.
get. And yeah, like it's more, he was more fun. Like it almost would be a worthwhile experiment to just remake Walk the Line with him. Just because it's like he's digging into something interesting there.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, well, this is like the Mangold cinematic universe now between
exactly.
like I don't know who we're gonna get next. I guess somebody else that whose lives crossed with Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan, and then we'll have like a whole trilogy of movies that intersect in some way.
David Bowie. Cause like
Yeah.
here's how you do it. Even I thought about this actually, because because his whole point in the beginning, Dylan's whole point for coming to New York, is because he heard that Guthrie was dying, and he wanted
Mm.
to meet him because his music was so important to him. And he goes to the hospital, and he pulls out his guitar. Guthrie asks him to play something, and he plays a song called "Dear Mister Guthrie."
Mm.
And years later, at some point in Bowie's career, he writes a song and records a song called "Dear Mister Dylan."
Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah, then
I think you got it. Yeah.
that's how you make it work.
Mhm.
But I think honestly, like, what was his last album called again? Bowie's, was it Lazarus?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I know that there's like a Broadway production of it or something like that.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the better Bowie movie. Instead of it being a biopic, just make a really gonzo surrealist musical. That might be more interesting.
Hmm.
Luca is covered in water, which can only mean one thing. He's been digging
Okay.
around in the toilets.
Oh boy.
And speaking of, is there any toilet wine in Sing Sing?
No, there's no toilet wine, there's no Jenkum usage. It's a pretty spick and span movie as far as that stuff's concerned. But yeah, so I watched Sing Sing this week. Speaking of movies that from last year that were nominated for awards, this is the second feature from director Greg Quidar. And of course, this is a movie about the infamously bad prison Sing Sing that's in New York, which is very old and very gross. And I think they actually filmed there, and you get that all of that disgustingness, all of that, like this place is clearly falling apart, but they don't care. But more specifically, this is about the performing arts program that is run by volunteers within that prison. It's used as kind of a rehabilitation tool for prisoners. It's there for them to be able to get away for a couple hours a week, to sort of get away from their cells, get away from their sort of lot in life. And, before I get into the actual movie, I gotta say, I am pissed about how A24 botched the release of this movie
Mm.
because I remember seeing trailers for this like way back in like mid 2023, and the movie premiered at the Toronto Film Fest in September of that year, and it had a planned release of summer 2024. And that happened, but in a very limited capacity. Like all of the critics saw it last summer, all of the people that lived in New York and LA saw the movie, and then they pulled the film from its wide release because they smelled blood in the water. They caught that scent of Oscar gold. And so the movie remained in limbo until January of this year. And then it was just kind of like pooped out into theaters, and it had a very half-hearted, award campaign, mostly devoted to Coleman Domingo. And then it was kind of just forgotten by a lot of people. And so They just should have released it when it originally was supposed to come out, and I think it would have fared a lot better because this movie, to get into the movie itself, this movie was great. I loved it. It's a shame that it kind of got forgotten. You know, it's not doing anything revolutionary, but it's just a well-told story about sort of the healing power of the performing arts. It has a lot in common with another movie that I loved last year, Ghostlight. And
Yeah.
I think there's only two professional actors in the main cast. You know, the aforementioned Coleman Domingo and then Paul Raci, who plays the director of the play that the prisoners are putting on. And it's a very, very similar character that he did in The Sound of Metal. But because he's so good at just playing that type of character, just kind of like the level-headed uh performer, I guess, or artsy guy. And otherwise, the main cast is all like the actual prisoners,
No
or at least the
shit.
one, yeah, like the actual prisoners playing themselves. Like they are playing because this is based on a true story about a play that all of these Sing Sing prisoners actually put on, and they are all playing themselves. And these guys are fucking amazing actors for like literally just being like convicts. Incredible actors. And
Wow.
one of them was even he was nominated, I think, for a couple of supporting actor awards this past award season, because he has kind of one of the larger roles. He probably has the most screen time in the movie next to Coleman Domingo, and he was really, really good. And so yeah, I mean, seek this one out. It's on Max now. You can
Yeah.
watch it for the price of your Max subscription. And yeah, it's another one of those films from, you know, last year that I'm kicking myself for not seeing in the year that it was released, because it probably would have landed on my top 10. But there's not much I can do about that now.
No, no,
But
no.
one other thing I did want to touch on too is after watching this movie, I wanted to seek out movies from this director, Greg Quidar,
Oh.
because I liked this movie so much. And the only other feature that Greg Quidar has done is a 2016 movie called Transpecos. And so it's very strange, this guy's career trajectory, because he did this, you know, 9 years ago now, he did this movie called Transpecos, and then now he comes back suddenly and does this movie that gets all this awards attention. But this movie, you can find this very easily on all of the freemium services out there. It's on Tubi, it's on Freevee, but this is a very, very different film. Think of it as like a very low budget Sicario, is kind of how I would describe it. It's about three border patrol guards who are they're stationed at a remote checkpoint in the armpit of Texas. And basically what happens is they pull over the wrong car. They pull over a car that they probably should have just let scoot by the border. And that's kind of where I'll leave that, not to spoil it. But
Interesting.
this was, yeah, this was also very well done. I really like this too. I mean, it's definitely a first time feature. There's a little bit of shagginess here and there, but yeah, I'm in the bag for Greg Quidar now, and so do seek out both of these films.
Just looking at the cast for Transpecos, I just
Hmm.
I love the three leads in this. You have Young
Yeah.
Neil, Johnny Simmons, you have Gabriel Luna, you have Clifton Collins Jr.
Hmm.
And I think it's funny that those I know that those guys aren't necessarily stars, but they've been in some real films before.
Oh
Because
yeah.
yeah, because like
Hmm.
the one of the blurbs for this is a no celebrity movie done right, and I'm like, I don't know. Clifton Collins Jr. is a name. I don't know if
Oh yeah,
he's
definitely.
a celebrity. Young Neil is a celebrity to me, but now this is both are on my radar. I'm definitely gonna have to
Yeah.
watch these. That's
Hmm.
awesome. Okay,
Hmm.
thank you for the recommendation. And I
Yeah.
guess the trend here for our watch list is stuff that we, you know, got too late. And not
Hmm.
only did I see this, long past when I maybe should have, I forgot that I had. So this is me talking about a movie I watched 2 months ago, and that's Humane, the first film by, I want to get her name right because I know she's a Cronenberg,
Yeah, that's right.
Caitlin Cronenberg. So
Hmm.
she's yet another spawn, of the master, David Cronenberg. And much like her brother, they both, have this ability to come up with a very completely twisted concept, that is really fucked up and disturbing, and for the most part deliver on the promise of it. For a first time feature, like whether the premise of Humane is this, climate change is really ravaging the planet, food and resources are scarce, and people in other countries are just dying by the millions, and to continue to ensure that the human species can survive, the United States has basically instituted a death draft. You can volunteer to, and no, Luca, no, 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 oh God,
Oh no.
he's reaching for the cords. He's gonna pull my plug
Gonna
before I
pull
know it.
cords.
He's gonna pull my plug. But you can elect to be euthanized, and in exchange, your children can go to college for free. Your family will get a massive chunk of cash, to like pay for the fact that you chose to do the planet and the species a favor by dying.
Okay.
And this is introduced like really well in the opening, like sequence, because there's these construction guys just driving and picking each other up for work, and they go to the last house to pick up their last coworker, and instead there's the agency that is doing the euthanizing. The people in the white suits are wheeling the body out, on a stretcher, and and this dude's wife is holding an envelope, and she just like makes eye contact with her dead husband's coworkers, and they just get this crestfallen look on their face and drive away all pissed, because it's a fucked up, situation. It's a really weird reality to live in, but they're normalizing the virtue of killing yourself, and
Mhm.
it's very well done. What gets shaggy about this movie is what the story actually is, where you have this rich family, and he has all these, scions, these children that are, have different careers that they're at, and they have different lives. One, played by Jay Baruchel, is a consultant for the government who's basically doing PR for the suicide program, and even like putting forward that, hey, we don't let children do it, but maybe we should give them the option. Never mind how that makes his own son feel, that his dad is basically saying that he should be able to kill himself. You know what I mean? Like, so like there's that aspect to it. There's another kid who was a virtuoso piano player but is a drug addict. So like, he's feeling some type of way. They all get invited to a dinner party, at their father's home. He's like a famous news anchor, and he has made the decision along with his wife to to I guess enlist, and offer themselves up, to die. And so they have this really fancy dinner that his wife prepares. They tell the family what they're going to be doing, and the kids are all pissed. They're all worried about, like, what does this mean for, because is this the parents who are talking about doing it? And then their stepmom leaves the room and fucking flees the house because she's changed her fucking mind. And then who should show up but the agency, who's like, okay, we're here. Oh, you've
Sure.
signed up for two. We can't just do one. So one of you has to decide who's going to die. And then they're
Okay.
locked in the house, and they're forced to have to make this impossible decision about which of them should die alongside their father. And once it finally gets around to its ending, it's really fucking satisfying, and it works. They find a way to finish the logic, but what I found frustrating and unfulfilled in was exploring more aspects. I wanted more world building for once in my life. They like it was so effortless and there was like just not enough of it. But every little morsel I got just like made my jaw hit the floor where I was like, oh, that's terrible. I just wanted them to keep showing me how fucked this world was. Yeah, because like they can't walk outside. They always have to have like coats over them or umbrellas. They have special film on all the windows because the UV rays are just like irradiating people to death. So like
Mm.
it's very subtle, very well done. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but I'd be willing to see something with her name in the credits again for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta check this out. It's interesting to watch, to compare, just watching this trailer as you've been talking, to compare like the visual styles of the two Cronenberg children. And this is much more like, I don't know, this almost reminds me of like a like Soderbergh, like Black Bag, the movie, that I
Mm,
just saw,
yeah.
where it's like, it's very like shot reverse shot and very like medium, you know, focal length. And then you look at like Brandon Cronenberg and he's like full on, he's just like up in your ass and he's like doing all the artsy stuff. And it's just funny to see that. It's clear that, Caitlin Cronenberg's probably more, she's more like on like the hard, she wants to get her message across. She wants to get her point across. And
Yeah.
it's just interesting to compare those two things. And yeah, I hope she makes another movie. I was before the show, I was looking to see kind of what she has lined up next, and there's nothing. And so there's been nothing announced and nothing on her in pre-production for her. So hopefully she's got something in the pipe.
Yeah, no, like this had the vibe of like a indie thriller from like 10 years ago. Like did you
Hmm.
ever see the movie Cheap Thrills?
Yeah, yeah, with Pat
Yeah.
Healy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pat Healy. It has those kinds of vibes. And in consequently like it doesn't have very ambitious, technical aspirations obviously. And that's okay. Like that shouldn't be a big deal, but it does make me hope that she, if she does get another chance to make a movie, that she spreads her wings a little bit, tries to let her hair out, kind of like her brother does, where like all those sequences from Infinity Pool, where like they're hallucinating and they're like having their fucking blood orgies, like get get some more memorable imagery. But as far as like her ability to take a high concept and run with it, I think she proved what she could do.
Okay, awesome.
And next up, Matt continues to be a world traveler for us on this show. What is Black Dog?
Yeah, but I've been waiting on this one. This I've just been waiting for this to drop on streaming or rental. It took a long time for some reason. This is a movie from director Guan Hu that it got a little bit of buzz last year because it I don't know, I guess it's like the rare film to come out of China that doesn't seem to be artistically compromised, I guess is kind of how I would put it. Yeah, specifically by the government, because the government looks at everything that you do as far as artistry in China, and they tell you what you can do, what you can't do, what your film can contain and what it can't contain. And you still get, it's kind of funny because when this movie starts, you still get that government logo at the beginning during all of the production company logos. It pops up. It's like, People's Republic of China and, funding and stuff like that. But it otherwise seems pretty untouched because it was just such a surprise to me because this movie is highly critical of the Chinese government. And essentially, what it is about is a small town in northwest China in the lead up to the 2008 Olympics, the Beijing Olympics. And this town is nowhere near Beijing, and yet they are doing all of these projects to so-called revitalize the town, including like bulldozing people's homes. You know, they're bulldozing like their shanty homes and like the low income housing. They're just bulldozing it all because we can't have people traveling to China, or we can't have people filming inside of China during the Olympics and showing these like shanty towns. So we're just going to bulldoze all of them. And we're also going to be putting bounties on all of the stray dogs. So you have these dog catcher, these amateur like dog catcher like groups popping up, of all these guys who are getting drunk. You know, they're sitting at the local restaurant and they're all getting drunk, and then they're going out and catching stray dogs and, you know, euthanizing them for profit, basically. And it's highly, highly critical of China's sort of rapid development and the people that the country is kind of leaving behind. And so, yeah, it was such a surprise to me. I'm just like, how was this made in the country and then let out of the country? I don't know. I guess I can't explain it,
Hmm.
but I guess because the director Guan Hu, he is a pretty storied director. In China, he's done a lot of movies, you know, a lot of blockbusters, too. But this movie is sort of it was really good. I really liked it. I mean, beyond the message, it's about the movie's protagonist. His name is Lang, and he was recently let out of prison, and so he goes back to the town, the in question, the town I've been talking about, and he's trying to kind of restart his life, but it's proving to be kind of hard because of all the, you know, he's one of these people that is being left behind. He's an ex-con, and he's constantly having to check in with the government, and he is constantly, his parole officer is like following him everywhere, and it's just like, crazy, crazy stuff, you know, like surveillance state shit. And it's it was really a well done story, though. It's kind of about how he forms a bond with one of these stray dogs, that people are trying to round up. The dog in question that he forms the bond with has a higher price on its head than all of the other dogs because it's proving really, really hard to catch.
Hmm.
And so he finds a way to catch it, and then he forms this bond with this dog. And yeah, I really, really loved it. It was a great, you know, just really, really well done story, and like I said, a very timely message, and probably not something we're going to see a whole lot, as far as movies made in China that are highly critical of that country's government. And so
Yeah.
I rented it. It was a 4.99 rental, so well worth the price.
No, I'm gonna have to pull the trigger on that. I am very interested now, and I
Hmm.
am now curious as well as to like what kind of clout did he have to get the sign off on it? Unless it's like this is some weird like reverse psychological, psyop on Americans into like, oh, watch this Chinese movie, it's critical of the Chinese government. Like they're just reverse engineering our attentions, because as we all know, through the tariff situation, they don't need Hollywood anymore. They don't want
Yeah.
Hollywood anymore. So yeah, I guess we might as well just watch what they make, for themselves and for the world, and it'll still make, like that animated movie made like $2 billion, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, Naza two
An
or whatever it's called. Yeah,
insane
I
amount of
think
money.
it's like the fifth highest grossing movie ever now, like ever, even including every, you know, all American movies, all movies made by any country. It's like the fifth highest grossing movie of all time now, which is absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Well, now, moving on, we're gonna talk about our main event for today, Warfare, directed by Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza, and also written by Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland. Mendoza, I guess, came into our awareness because he was some kind of military consultant on Garland's previous film, Civil War. And going into this, after seeing a trailer for it, I didn't know what to expect. I thought, oh, this looks really small. This kind of just looks like a waste of time, even. But as I was watching it, it just made me think of my cousin Matt, who served in the Marines in Iraq. And when he came back from like his first or second tour, we were down in Colorado for his wedding, and he was telling us all a story, from the Battle of Fallujah, or like one of the many battles in Fallujah. If you are aware of the history of the Iraq War, it seemed like the Americans and the insurgents were just trading that city back and forth constantly over the years. But in one in particular, it was door to door fighting. Marines were just moving in groups, kicking down a door, looking for insurgents, killing them, and moving on. And in at some point in that battle, he and like his best friend got cut off from their unit. They were just kind of pinned down in doorways on a street while people in buildings were shooting down at them. A little girl tried to run across the street and got shot, and the friend ran out there, grabbed the girl and took her to safety, did some kind of first aid on her, and then he and Matt just went, building by building on this block and killed everybody, as he tells it. May not be true. I want to believe that it is, just because it's the kind of like you if you would put this in a movie, you wouldn't believe it sort of situations. But if it ever were to be, I would hope that it would be made like this, where you just don't get the typical, trite setups in like a war movie. And admittedly, like it kind of does have that in very believable and like subtle ways. Like we don't really get introduced to every single person. We don't get to know everyone's personality. At the base, like, oh, like my mama sent me something from home. Like they just skip by that, and instead we just get this very strange beginning to a movie like this with the ass of the woman from the Eric Pride's "Call on Me" video. That I did not expect, and we'll dig into maybe what that is supposed to mean. But this movie is less of a narrative experience. This is just taking the memories of the people who lived through a real event in, like a real war, and trying to, realize it for one of those individuals who was badly wounded in it and has no memory of it. Like that's the whole inspiration behind this movie. Oh, Luke is telling me off. He's mad at me.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. But it does it in such a way where, yeah, like there's this terrible tension to like what war really is. You're bored, you're just waiting for something to happen, you're worried about what could happen, you're trying to strategize and game plan for any eventuality, and then it's the thing that you least expect every time, like a grenade through a sniper hole, that completely fucks up all your plans, puts you on the back foot, and puts all of your lives in extreme danger. And once the bullets start flying, and like in in the severity of their situation kind of comes in, it's like all of that boredom and that just kind of like people sitting around taking notes and watching, the movements of people on a street. It's like that's the what those operators have to do. And like what this movie is, ultimately, because like there's a genre of like podcasters out there that are former SEALs operatives that now just make a living shilling like coffee and like guns, and then
Black Rifle Coffee.
Yeah, just telling stories like, oh yeah, man, like like the sheriff of Baghdad. That dude is everywhere these days, and it's just him telling stories about what he did every day. And this feels like just one of those operations that he doesn't talk about, or like those kinds of people don't talk about, because everything went so wrong. People cracked, like they're like Will Poulter's character is like, I can't, like I'm fucked up. I need you to take over the situation. I can't get us out of here. I can't plan us out of here. I'm broken by what just happened. And I just don't think that those kinds of people would be willing to tell those kinds of stories. And it's to the credit of Mendoza that we kind of get a Apollo 13 of a military story where it's a successful failure. Like everybody made it out, they didn't make it out whole, but and that's the weird thing. Not a lot of people die in this movie. Like
Mhm.
there's just lots of guns getting fired, but I can't remember a single time where all that machine gun fire from a Navy SEAL actually like mutilates and destroys an insurgent. You don't get that satisfaction. It's just pure tension and terror, even when nothing's happening. Like when they're just trying to get their bearings and they realize, oh shit, all my stuff is in the room where the grenade was thrown. I need my gun. I need my pack. I need all my gear. And they have to like go back in multiple times to try and find it because they just don't know if another fucking grenade is going to come through or not. They know bad guys are on the roof waiting to kill them. And like this surpasses previous operator porn films just because it has an honesty, not just authenticity. It has an honesty about the fact that yeah, these are badasses and they're in war, but they are human beings. And eventually the rubber hits the road and even they don't know how they're going to react when it does. And I I had recently reappraised Civil War, not too long ago. Really dogged on that movie for like what it didn't give me or like what I wanted it to give me. And this movie made me long for them to make some kind of companion film where we are not embedded not with journalists but with some soldiers in that speculative conflict. But warfare's strength is its you commitment to recreating a moment from a conflict that only the people who lived through it remember, that Hollywood would have never looked at. And even if I only see this movie once, I like can confidently kind of say and feel that I have seen the best movie of 2025 right now. I'm willing to be
Mm.
proven wrong, but I just got so much out of this experience and it made me think so much for a tight 90, for an
Yeah.
unconventional approach that it took. And yeah, like there's no like great Shakespearean dialogue in this. It's all just jargon, but the impact that it left on me was pretty profound, honestly. But what did you think?
Yeah, I kind of in a similar vein. I still have trouble. I mean, I kind of alluded to it in my intro at the very beginning of the episode, but I still have a trouble even like judging what this movie gave me, or what the movie, you have to take it at its terms. It like forces you to, and it's less a narrative film and, like I said, more of an experience. um there's no string music, no like wailing strings, no badass montages, no
No needle
set pieces.
drops,
Yeah, no needle drops, and
yeah,
it's just like raw and uncomfortable, and it makes every other war movie look contrived just by comparison. And like the example I would give would be like The Hurt Locker, which is a great film, one that we've reviewed on this very program, and that film is built out of contrived set pieces and making Jeremy Renner's character look like a badass. And so like, you have to ask what does realism, like the realism of this movie, buy you? Well, it buys you an accurate account, and it buys you a better understanding of what a modern, firefight looks like, what a modern battle looks like. And then, but what doesn't it give you? It doesn't give you really well sketched characters. It doesn't give you a, typical plot. And so I have a hard time judging this movie by the typical metrics that we would assign any other movie that we review on this show, especially because it doesn't really even seem that particularly interested in following that typical template of a narrative feature. It's only really interested in being like a living memorandum of the
yeah.
experience that these soldiers went through. And so Yeah, I don't I just I have trouble placing it. I enjoyed the experience of watching it, and I think fondly about it. I think that this will also probably be one of my favorites of the year. Um and it was so tense, and like, so it was almost unbearable how tense
Yeah.
this movie was, especially at the beginning. I had a hard time sitting still in my seat. And the last time I can actually remember feeling this anxious during a movie was the 2017 movie It Comes at Night, the Trey Edward Schultz movie. I specifically remember feeling that way during that movie, or this way during that movie too. And so, very effective, incredibly effective at what it's trying to do. And yeah, that's kind of where I'll leave it for now. I don't know, where did you want to start with our sort of branching,
Yeah.
wherever we could go now?
Well, let's start at the beginning. Why the fuck did they start it with Call on Me?
I think, I don't know, I haven't given it much thought, but I was sort of under the impression that it was basically the one scene they were going to give you of of sort of getting to know these guys a little bit before they're put immediately into the shit.
Yeah.
Because any other film, as we've talked about, any other movie would have like a half hour of scenes like this before they got into the actual like firefights and like the climax, the rising action. But this movie is like, no, we're gonna give you one like 2 minute long scene of these guys just kind of showing these guys as humans, and then we're gonna immediately put them in the shit. And that's kind of how I took it. But yeah, it sounded like you had a theory. What do you say?
Well, it didn't click for me until the end of the movie, during the credits, where like they have a dedication to the infantry, Bradley division, where they're
Hmm.
just like, "Thank you for always answering the call."
Yeah.
So it seems on the nose, but it's like, yeah, like if you're gonna take a cheesy, Britpop dance song from the era to like have some kind of a connection to it, either they literally were on a laptop watching the music video to like get their blood pumping before they went out. You like, that's maybe that was something they actually did, or
Hmm.
it's just a cute little way of trying to like thematically work a song into the movie. But
Hmm.
and speaking of the Bradleys, they are a piece of military equipment that I've heard of before. And
Hmm.
I had no fucking idea they could fire that cannon that it has that rapidly. And getting to see like
Yeah.
them just like clear the rooftops, that was worth the price of admission alone. Just because like it was unexpected and
Yeah.
really kind of neat.
Yeah, this is a movie that is like absolutely steeped in like sand and dust and just debris. Like, there are so many scenes in this film of like dust being like scattered, or low flying planes when they
Yeah.
do like the show of forces, and it's just it's like a sandstorm. And or like when like when the grenade goes off, when the IED goes off. This is a movie that is just dirty as fuck. Yeah.
Well, and the gore in this, like I appreciated the fact that they were honest about the Iraqi, translators literally just being meat shields for them. Like
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
constantly putting them in the place that they themselves don't want to be. They're the first ones out the door. They're the ones having to guard the street level. And when they are, just jibbed and reduced to gore on the street, every single time, like as the movie progressed, that you'd cut back to that, or just like see their like this dude cut in half just next, just lying on the street later on in the movie. It was just like, oh fuck, like they literally brought those dudes out there, knew them by name, and they probably didn't even bother to ever retrieve their bodies.
Hmm.
And that was just fucked up, but
Yeah.
that's the reality that they were living in.
Yeah, no, it's great that the movie doesn't shy away from stuff like that because yeah, that is something that I also appreciated was, that they basically were using these translator ISF soldiers and also like the family too. The
Yeah.
family that were in the house, they were basically, they were
Hostages.
in that yeah, they were
Yeah.
basically hostages. They were just in that bedroom the entire time and then one of the last visuals we get of the movie is them sort of walking out into their living room, just covered in blood and like dust everywhere. And
Bullet holes in every door and wall, and yeah,
yeah,
their whole life just got fucked up because they just chose to set up shop there.
yeah. And so yeah, I mean, that's it's nice to get that they don't shy away from stuff like that, and that's kind of one of the things that is um one of the things that stands out to this movie. It is realistic. It is, by all accounts, a accurate account of what actually happened. But this movie kind of stands out to me as having what I would call abnormal authenticity. And so one of the things that I don't know if you had anything you wanted to call out in that vein, but one of the things that really that I loved was I think you had kind of mentioned this a little bit in your intro, but how almost all of the small arms fire was incredibly inaccurate,
Yeah.
and most of it's just covering fire. Most of it is just blind, them blind firing over a wall. I think I literally counted one actual person getting shot, and that was one of the Iraqi guys as he was like running across the street at one
Mm-hmm.
point. He gets shot and he kind of falls into a doorway. And that was it. That was the only person I think that got shot in the entire movie. And so yeah, that really stood out to me as, you know, I don't think that gunfire is nearly as accurate as, something like Call of Duty would want you to believe, or Call
Yeah.
of Duty has been trying to train people to think. And so, yeah, anything that stood out to you as sort of abnormally authentic?
um in the beginning, where they're just sitting there, they're all taking notes, they're all reporting to each other to report over the radio and trying to decipher that, to understand what was
Mhm.
going on. And like when they're always talking to Alpha 2, trying to like understand what Alpha 2 was dealing with, because like while they're
Mhm.
holed up in this house, this other team is like in active firefights and just trying to survive in the
Yeah.
streets, just like a ways away. And then because of what they're going through, they have no choice but to go just come and bail them out. And
Mhm.
like I'm trying to think of what else. Oh fuck, let's be real here. The when the two dudes get their legs blown off, like when
Yeah.
Cosmo Jarvis and what's his name?
Is it what's his name? The guy who's playing Johnny Storm.
Yeah, Joseph Quinn. Yeah,
Yeah, Joseph Quinn.
when like when they are just like they're screaming, and like someone just touches their leg or grazes their leg, and they just like are just losing it, like my son is right
Yeah.
now, because the cup doesn't have water in it, and he can put the lid on and then he can take it off, but there's no more water in it, and he's mad about it. But like when those dudes get fragged, and like how heavy a body is,
Yeah.
when the Mendoza character is like trying to drag you know Elliot, Cosmo Jarvis, into the building, and no one fucking comes to help him.
Yeah. And his
Like
like leg
yeah,
his leg gets stuck or his foot gets stuck on like the wall.
yeah,
Oh, that was so yeah.
yeah, that was rough. Then and
Mhm.
when they kept on demanding more morphine, like I thought that was a nice touch, because it's like, yeah, I would be too. I don't like I barely have legs. Like, just the effects that they did for the injuries and the dead Iraqis were just really effective, because I will say the crunching of popcorn in my theater stopped very quickly after
Yeah.
after that lingered on screen long enough. Oh, buddy, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, there was like it is stuff like that also, in addition to how like anxiety inducing the movie is in the lead up to when, the shit finally does pop off. It, the stuff like the screaming, like the constant screaming from the characters, it just like it clearly there was a couple guys in my theater, because I mean, of course my theater was nothing but dudes,
Yeah.
and a lot of boomer dudes, and there was a guy sitting down the row from me who was clearly having a tough time getting through some of the scenes, and he, like a lot of old people during movies, he felt the need to sort of vocally express himself. So it was a lot of like, he was doing a lot of shifting, and he was doing a lot of exasperated sighing during, because he was so stressed out. And I kind of
Oh.
noticed that. And yeah, it was pretty rough during some scenes. And I don't know if he was like an actual like veteran or anything like that, but he was
Yeah.
clearly having a tough time.
Okay. Because like that's something that like, I was kind of considering. It's like I'm curious if my because I'm gonna talk to my cousin about this because I know that like Saving Private Ryan was one of those movies that veterans of any war just couldn't handle, like the D-Day
Mhm.
sequence from that. And this movie is like what if you just had 90 minutes in real time of you know storming the beach at Normandy,
Mhm.
effectively just from like an equivalent wartime experience would be. Because I have to feel like the average day in some of these battles in Iraq felt like this, where you were
Yeah.
just getting thrown into the shit and you were just, fighting like hell to make sure that you and your buddy made it home alive. Because, yeah, it's a different kind of war, but I did appreciate how they didn't go out of their way to make the insurgents be evil. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They're just a presence and they're
Yep.
capable and their tactics, like gave them an advantage. And so like it's a war movie without jingoism and judgment baked into it, which is also
Mhm.
pretty rare. Especially in the idea that this came out in the midst of Trump's America is pretty funny. When we're gonna
Mhm.
have like a military parade on his birthday, at some point, like the because because this is like almost 20 years ago, the events that inspired this. So
Yeah.
it's still, and even then, like it like you say, this reflects even how war is now. there's, there's probably more drones involved, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm still waiting to see, like, once the Ukraine war is over, if and when it ever ends, like, make a warfare Ukraine. Like, find
Mm.
some story from that and take this same philosophy, and you could make a pretty powerful film too, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. Um, One thing I wanted to definitely touch on, it'd be a mistake not to, is the cast that was assembled for this movie is just absolutely crazy, and even more so that it is not the most like it's not the most thespian movie.
Yeah.
These guys they're not given these big character arcs. A lot of it is just kind of spouting a lot of military jargon, and I did a lot of I watched some behind the scenes stuff for this movie on YouTube about how they went through the whole like 3 week boot camp thing and learning to do everything correctly, and so it's a lot of that. But even so, it is nuts, just the cast that they assembled. I mean, even the biggest surprise to me was, 3/4 of the way through the movie, um, last year's best supporting actor favorite Charles Melton just shows up
My boy.
with the other platoon of guys, and he just kind of shows up and takes control of everything. And my wife, Nikki, she told me that he was actually present during that first scene when they're all watching the music video. But I didn't even clock that he was in that scene. And then he just shows up, and I'm like, holy shit, this is nuts. All the people showing up, and D Faro Wunatai. who I know from the show Reservation Dogs, which I loved. He is playing sort of the Ray Mendoza's character, and he was great, and Cosmo Jarvis was great, and I think probably the guy who got the biggest character arc, if you would even call it that, would probably be Will Poulter's character
Yeah.
because he goes from you know having his shit together and kind of being able to tell people where to go and what to do to yeah, like you said, just being like completely fucked up and yeah, that was pretty powerful and so yeah, I love the cast that they got for this thing. They clearly wanted to tell this story. All of these guys, they clearly were invested in the story, the behind the scenes. So
Well, and speaking of that, Michael Gandolfini in an interview talked about,
mhm.
like a kind of a neat, personal connection he had to the real world, events actually. James Gandolfini, obviously his famous father, was heavily involved with the Wounded Warrior Project, and he apparently would like give really expensive watches to wounded veterans, and multiple of the men involved in this who were wounded got watches from his father, and then he got to be
Okay.
in the movie. And so like that's pretty cool, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
that's
That I
awesome.
got a kick out of that little anecdote.
Mhm.
um what else was I gonna? Oh, buddy,
Well,
nap
one thing
time.
I kind of wanted to ask you about. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you know the answer to this, but I haven't looked enough into it to figure it out. But
Yeah,
at the very end of the film, we get this sort of pre-credits, all this real life footage, and what is
yeah,
behind the blurring of the faces during that? What do
yeah.
you have a theory there, or do you know the answer?
I have an explanation, and maybe
Okay,
and a theory about the explanation. Um, the guys who obviously are credited with first and last names, those real like their real counterparts were like, I guess gave their approval to be identified. But
okay,
if you're a a special forces operator, you sometimes don't want it known that that's your history, and
sure,
like not everybody is as public as like the the operator porn influencer types, who just write a book, or have a podcast and talk about it. Some people don't want it actually put out there that they were in the SEALs, that they operated in a country, because it makes them a target in their civilian life after the fact. Theoretically, one could argue, if ISIS had been more powerful still in the world today, and they had more influence, in the United States to have insurgent terrorists locally, it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility for a former, SEAL, special forces guy, to be a target for an assassination. So that's why their names are changed or their faces are blurred.
okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I assumed was the case. And then also, one of the other things I thought of too is that maybe, a lot of these guys, because like you pointed out, we're about 20 years removed from this event now. And so I would have to assume that some of these guys have gone on to um like careers in maybe like CIA or like
Oh,
I don't
that's
know,
true
more
too. Yeah,
yeah, like
or
they
they're military contractors.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
like
so
they're
they don't want to be
Blackwater.
identified.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of what I had assumed. But yeah, I think that also makes sense that they just don't want to be identified or they just don't want to be involved, basically. It's not
Yeah.
something they want to dredge up. And so but yeah, I like that little last thing where they showed the real life counterparts with the actors
They
and
were even
even
showing the making of the movie. I thought that was kind
yeah,
of weird. You don't see that too often, but
no,
yeah.
no, no, not at all. So yeah, that was cool. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much anything I wanted to mention. Anything else you wanted to discuss or any particulars that you wanted to bring up?
I think we have covered every base.
Yeah.
A shout out to David J. Thompson. Just one last little note. is the
Yep.
cinematographer in this. Like, he did a really good job. You know,
Hmm.
you you're photographing this and getting it together. The slow mo stuff, was very effective. The IED blast in and of itself, and just every little nook and cranny of this movie, well constructed and effective. But
Yep.
yeah, let's move on to the mention. Luca, hey, no, 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 you don't do that, buddy. You don't touch the keys. You don't touch the keys. Oh God, that could have been bad. All right, you take it away.
Yeah, so my mentionable this week
Oh, buddy.
is actually the soundtrack to the new show, the new anime from the Cowboy Bebop creator. The show is called Lazarus, and I did watch the first episode of Lazarus. I think it's on Max, on HBO Max. And it's fine. The show itself is fine. It's very, very similar to Cowboy Bebop. Kind of annoyingly so, actually, where it's like, you're kind of asking while you're watching it, you're kind of asking yourself like, hey, can't you do anything else?
Yeah.
Um but the soundtrack to this show is great. The whole thing is up on YouTube if you want to go listen to it. It is done by the jazz musician Kamasi Washington, who's really, really great. And so yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. Go check it out. Go bring it up on YouTube. Listen to the whole thing. It's very effective. It's probably the most effective element of the show itself. It's the thing that and that's also another thing that Cowboy Bebop was known for was its soundtrack. And so it's another thing that they got right again. So yeah, go check out the Lazarus original soundtrack.
Gotcha. I kind of let things cycle a little too far there, because my mentionable is the Outdoor Boys YouTube channel, who's just a guy and his family doing weird little challenges and like wilderness survival. And if you want to learn how to build a snow cave, this is a way to do it. If you want to know how to make campfire bread, and the best way to enjoy it, which you pointed out in the document, is that honey butter. He says the
Yeah.
same thing every single time. Oh, that's good. Oh, nom nom nom. And honestly, like, I'm finding myself enjoying the meals aspect of it almost as much as
Yeah.
I enjoy seeing the DIY, like all the projects on his homestead, like how you build a fire when your wood's wet, like all those like little things like that. Every time that man has like hiked up a mountain and is like freezing to death, and he finally gets to like eat his warmed over, like, oh, I got some chicken curry and rice or couscous. Oh, it's so hot, I have to eat it quickly or it's gonna get cold on me really quick. It just looks so satisfying, and I want
Yeah.
that satisfaction. I like, because you know what I mean, like, or even like when you like work really hard outside, especially in the cold, and you get that first burst of like a cup of cocoa or a hot meal, there is something to be said that like that is worth its weight in gold, even though you have to pay for it in sweat, and in discomfort to get to enjoy that. And so I'm envious of this man's willingness and ability to do that. Like, and I joked to Angie, I was like, I want to move to Alaska. I want to do what he like. I want this life. Doesn't it look awesome? Look how beautiful everything is. And she's just like, you're fucking insane. It's like we would never do this. I would never do this. And I'm like, well, a man can dream. Someday I will have
Mhm.
my Alaskan homestead, and my life will be perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I totally second this recommendation. I love this channel. It's one of the few YouTube channels that I'm actually subscribed to because I'll watch anything that he puts out, but particularly my favorites of his sort of rotating, he does like sort of a rotating selection of videos. One is like sometimes it's survival videos, sometimes it's just footage from his family vacations, but my personal favorite are the like videos of his like piece of shit cabin that he bought
Yeah.
like out just like out in the wilderness and his sort of very very slow process of like renovating it and actually like making making it livable and making it like putting heat in it and putting like electrical in it and making an actual road that goes to it.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
those. Yeah.
No, I spent a lot of time going back and starting at the beginning of that and catch because like he recently uploaded one within the last like week or so in that
Mhm.
particular series, and yeah, now it has insulation, now it has good siding, like the bunkhouse does. They finally yeah, because now they have the bunkhouse, they have the cabin. He's got his awesome garage, and yeah, I just
Mhm.
like what else do you need out there, man? Like I love
Yeah.
the fact that his kids just play Nintendo 64 while they're out there. Like it's like they got something figured out. I guess is all I'm trying
Mhm.
to argue as my son eats chapstick behind me.
Oh God.
Oh, Luca, he's trouble, dude. Yeah, I could not trust him on a homestead. He'd wander off and get eaten by a bear, more than likely. He's and then that's like what's crazy about like because like there's that one video where he's camping with his son and there's just wolves laughing nearby, like their tent, and he's like
Yeah.
whispering so he doesn't wake his kid up. But it's like Jesus Christ, I'd be shitting my pants. And yeah, he's just a good dude. Like, he's just
Yeah.
an all around good guy. It's one of the best channels on YouTube. Give it a
Mhm.
watch. Please watch Warfare. I can't
Yes.
recommend it any further than I have already. And next week I think we're kind of narrowing down on what that is gonna be. But yeah, it will depend on whether or not Minot gets the shrouds. But more than likely, what are we going to be, doing in a couple weeks, not next week?
Mhm. Yeah, well, if we don't get our hands on the new Cronenberg movie, we will probably be doing the Until Dawn film, the adaptation of the, God, I don't even know. I want to say like 2013 PlayStation 4 game, I want to say,
Yeah,
which is not really an adaptation. It seems to be more of like okay, we took the bones of this thing and then we turned it into Cabin in the Woods sort of thing. And so I'm definitely down for that, and yeah, looking forward to it.
right on. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Matt, as always. Been a pleasure. Have a good week, everybody.
Yeah, see ya.